Hello, it's story time. So we did a story already on David fighting Goliath. This is prior to him becoming Israel's second king. Saul is Israel's first king. So I wanted to do, I don't know how many parts it's going to be at this point, but several parts, maybe three, on Israel's first king. There's a really big change in their government system, and then there's the anointing of Saul, their first king, his kind of first little happenings, and then sort of a tragedy after that, him being rejected by God, and David, not his son Jonathan, Saul's son Jonathan, being anointed as the incumbent king of Israel. So I wanted to go back. How did Israel even start with kings? Or what did they have prior to Saul? So, quick backstory. From the time that Israel leaves Egypt and is on its way to the promised land, or goes into the promised land, they have what are called judges that rule over them. And these judges kind of do a little bit of battle stuff. They protect them. Samson was one of them, protects them from the Philistines in many instances. Some military campaign, some conquest here, taking over the land, some government, loose government system, mostly just doing some communication by God, like this kind of hybrid prophet, hybrid king, sort of loosey-goosey kind of role. Whatever they needed at the time, a judge would do. Their roles were very different. Primarily, it was God leading them very directly or very indirectly for a period of a few hundred years. So prior to Saul, there was Israel's last judge, which was Samuel. Now, Samuel was kind of brought up under the prior judge Eli. During Eli's time as a judge, there is a really, really bad period of time with Israel where they have a crushing defeat by the Philistines. Eli's sons they're kind of fooling around with the sacrifices, and when there's supposed to be like a burnt offering or a fatted calf, killed or something for a sacrifice, a peace offering or something like that, like they would take the best cuts of the animal for themselves, stuff that they shouldn't have been doing, being the sons in high priest roles, and then Eli being like the high priest or the judge at the time. So there's a lot going on. Israel's kind of fallen into some idolatry, and what ends up happening is this kind of really wild story that we'll jump into more detail in another story time. But quick overview is Israel goes into battle. God has communicated to Eli that what him and his sons have been doing is unacceptable, and they're going to die. They're not going to precede him as judges or even be in the high priest role at all. They're going to die. So Israel goes into battle with the Philistines, and they are utterly defeated, absolutely demolished by the Philistines. Eli's sons, they both die. Hophni and Phinehas, I believe. They both die. And the Ark of the Covenant that they've been, they kept the Ten Commandments in, Aaron's rods, manna, it's stolen by the Philistines. They bring it into battle because they're like, well, once we bring out the Ark, the tables are going to turn, and we're going to start really dropping the hammer on them. But it doesn't happen because God's not with them. He says, nope, no. Y'all are acting fools. You're in rebellion against me. I'm not helping you. I fight your battles for you, but you're out here doing some wild stuff, and I'm not with it. And so you're going to have to get what's coming to you. So they go into battle, and it doesn't go their way at all. The Philistines take the ark. The word gets back to Eli, who's old. He's the word says he's old, and he's very heavy, and he's blind, or very hard of sight. And so a messenger comes back, and it tells Eli, it was a crushing defeat. Your sons are dead. and the ark's been taken. When he hears the ark's been taken, he faints, falls back out of his chair, breaks his neck, he's dead. So now his little protege, Samuel, who's probably not little at the time, his protege, Samuel, is now the judge over Israel. And so it's sort of right off the heels of this really bad defeat. Eventually, the ark makes its way back. It's a very fascinating story. We'll dive into it another time. Don't worry. But in any event, ark makes it back to Israel. Things are going, meh. But Israel says, we're done with this. There's too much back and forth. We don't have a real warrior to lead us into battle. We have like guys from tribes and the little, clans inside the tribes. We don't want that. We want a king like all the other nations, like the nation that just kicked our butts. They have a king. We want a king. So they're done with this. They're like, we don't want God to lead us the way that he's been leading us. We want a human king. We want a physical person here to fight our wars for us and to lead us and to judge over us. So Samuel hears all this and he takes it to God and is like, look, people are really not happy. And this is a very upsetting thing to God, because he's like, if you would just obey, you wouldn't be in these predicaments. You'd be in the land and secured for 1,000 generations. You'd never be removed from it. But you keep doing this dumb stuff, and so then you have to be punished for it. I can't allow you to keep doing this. I can't allow you to be following the Ashtaroths and the Baals and the Molechs and this idol worshiping and messing up the sacrifices and stealing and all. You can't do that and have all of my protections. You can't. No. You don't have my blessings and also be sinning all at the same time. No. Be right with me and everything will go well with you. So they don't listen. They don't want to hear that. So God says, you know what? Obey their voice. Do what they say. Find them a king. I'll bring one along to you. You anoint him. But I want you to warn them about how having a king is going to be. And I know that this is talking about Saul, but this is kind of, this part of the backstory is very important. So I want to jump in with our first reading here. I'm going to read right out of the scripture here. I'm going to put it up on the screen. We're going to read 1 Samuel 8, starting in verse 10. The warning about the kings. Here we go. Let me bring it up and make sure we're in the right spot. Boom. Perfect. All right. So I'm going to read out here. So Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking for a king from him. He said, "These will be the ways of the kings who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his chariots and to be his horsemen and to run before his chariots. And he will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s, and some to plow his grounds and to reap his harvest, and to make his implements of war and equipment of his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and your vineyards and olive orchards and give them to his servants. He will take 1/10 of your grain and of your vineyards and give it to his officers and to his servants. He will take your male servants, your female servants, and the best of your young men and your donkeys and put them to his work. He will take 1/10 of your flock, and you shall be his slaves. And in that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, but the Lord will not answer you in that day." Powerful, powerful stuff. This warning of this is not going to go the way you think it's going to go. He's not going to be some benevolent, once he tastes the power of what it is to be a king, to be the supreme leader over a huge group of people, you think he's just going to be chill? No. Your sons are going to die in the wars that he fights. He's going to take a huge chunk of your everything, your land, your flocks, your money, everything. He's going to take the best of everything in the land, the best men, the best women, the best everything. He's going to have the spoils of it all. He's going to plunder you. But you're asking for it. You're demanding it of me. So I will give it to you. If that's what you want, that's what you're asking for. You think you're asking for this thing, but this is what you're actually going to get. You think you're going to have some like valiant, virtuous leader who's going to take you on to conquer and have a big, defend the land and bring prosperity. Sure, he will do that, but it'll be his own prosperity. And he won't care about you. He's a human. He's just a man. So he brings this, and it goes on to say that Samuel tells them this, and they go, no. We want that. We will have for ourselves a king who will be over us, that may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. This whole time, God has been the one that's fought Israel's battles. Okay, Jericho, Egypt, this is what he does. He delivers them. It's not necessarily always in their time that they would like things to be done, but he does them at the precise time and in miraculous ways that could only be done by him. They don't want to hear it. So he says, fine, you can have a king. I'm going to give you one. But it's a wicked thing that they ask for. Samuel brings this up to them later. And what's really crazy, a takeaway just from that point, is people. We can see ourselves in Israel. That's one of the reasons why God chose them, and they behave the way that they do. They behave in a very human way. A lot of what they do, we do in our lives on an individual basis. And you can see this out in the world. We desire tyranny in exchange for a perception of security. It's a crazy thing. It's a crazy human condition, but we do it all the time. You could see it with different rollouts and mandates and different things that have happened, Patriot Acts and all this kind of tyranny, invasion, theft, plundering the best things of the nation, of your individual freedoms. They're given off to some entity who does not care about you in proportion to what you're having to give them, right? It's in, this is your sons. This is your prosperity and posterity. This is your future generations that are going off to die young. He will take your young men, he says. This is your future. He's going to rob you of it. Your firstborn, your strong sons, he's going to take them all and they're going to die. And that's your generation. That's who's going to inherit the things that you have. That's your continuation. You made those children and they're going to be cut off. We do that. Do we not? And we desire it. Say, no, take our money. Do that for us. We could do it better ourselves. We just put our minds together and get the job done. But I can't be bothered with it. I have shows to watch, or I have games to play, or sports to watch, or whatever it is. Please, I'll give you the money, way more than it costs to do the thing. You do it. I'll do this. I'll do the thing. I'll get to that, and you protect me. I could be responsible for my own thing, but I'd rather you overstep the boundary so I don't even have to think about it. This is something that we do, and it ends up being horrible. And what God says to them, I will not hear you when you realize how poorly this works out for you. I'm not going to listen. It will fall on deaf ears. I will not answer you in that day. It's crazy. So moving on, he brings along Saul. Saul is the quintessential, he's the guy. Now, there's a really fascinating thing about Saul. So Saul comes from the tribe of Benjamin, which is the smallest tribe of all the tribes of Israel. There's 12 tribes of Israel. And he also comes from the smallest clan. It's like a little sub-family or little group of that family, which goes with the sort of pattern that God establishes. He's always doing something like this, where it's like, Jesus is from Bethlehem, which is just a small little, He's born in Bethlehem. He's from Nazareth. This small. It's always these small little. David is chosen. He's the runt of the family. It's the little guys. Noah. When people are living for hundreds and hundreds of years, he's got 3 sons. Where people were having potentially hundreds of sons, he has 3. These sorts of things where it's the little guy, the unknown, the underdog, the unassuming. Now, that's the only thing that's unassuming about Saul. Saul is, it says, he is head and shoulders taller, bigger than everybody around. He is massive. He's a big guy. Not that the people at that time were all so big to make him really big, but relative to how big everybody else was around the time, around that area, he was a big guy. So he's brought before Samuel, and they're like, well, that's the guy. That's him. God tells Samuel, that's the man. Make him the guy. And we'll get this thing rolling. So Samuel anoints him as king, and Saul starts off good. He starts off humble. It's kind of like crazy. He's like, wow, this is like way more, than I thought this was going to be. And he's humble and, kind of really conservative, slow moving. He doesn't really want to take too much on, kind of still doing a little bit of farming. He kind of hides himself. He's not really out and super public or anything like that. He's very humble to start. Shortly after he starts his kingship, the Ammonites go to battle with Israel. The Ammonites tell the neighboring city that Israel is in, we are going to destroy you guys. We're gonna gouge out everybody's eyes. And so everybody's distraught because the Ammonites are formidable at the time, and the city was small. And how are they going to defend themselves? Saul had not made any sort of big campaigns or anything sort of crazy. It was just regular guy action. So they're like, well, what are we going to do? So everybody's kind of freaking out and crying and all this stuff. And when Saul hears it, he's like, what? What are we talking about? At the Ammonites. Okay, bring me 2 goats. So they bring him out 2 goats. And he's like, bring the goats out here. It's such a gangster thing. He had to be from New York for sure. Give me 2 goats. Where the goats at? Bring the goats right here. And he cuts both the goats in half, just cuts them in half. And he says, bring them through town, and you tell everybody they get the same thing if they're not following me in the battle right now. Same thing's going to be done to them. So basically, he immediately is like filled with the courage and the bravery, the faith, the belief, the Spirit of God. And he's like, what are we being so fearful about here? This is God's country. We got this. There's nobody's going to come in and gouging out anybody's eyes. Not on my watch. Not on his watch. Might not be too happy with us right now, but we're not getting eyes gouged out. So he rallies the people. The people see the goat. They're like, well, I certainly don't want that. He inspires a little bit of fear, but also a little bit of courage in them. Like, this guy he means business. He means business. I mean, if somebody walked through, my little town and cut some goats in half and was like, we got to go fight somebody, and I'm chopping up whoever doesn't go to battle. Like, all right, well, he's pretty serious. You don't see, goats cut in half every day. So he means he's got to be a little bit serious. So the people get behind him, and they get out there and they kick those Ammonites' butts. And so then people who were kind of like not on the whole, we want a king, or it's going to be Saul. Some people weren't on that train. And so everybody's kind of like, yeah, who is the folks that were saying that this guy ain't the one? Bring him out here so we can kill him. Those naysayers. And Saul's like, no, stop. There will be no bloodshed today. The Lord has brought a great salvation upon us. To now is a time for rejoicing. And people are like, dude, he's not a maniac either. He's a good guy. Yeah, for the good ones. And so it's a big party and everybody's like, yeah, wow, it's a good time. Samuel's like, well, this will be my time. I'm out. In chapter 12, he does a big farewell, and the farewell is sad. It's honestly sad. He basically is like, I've done nothing wrong to you. Not one person in this whole country can bring a charge against me that I ever did wrong by you people. Your rejection of me as your leader is not really a rejection of me. You're rejecting God being your king. Now you've appointed a man as your king. And it's a wicked thing that you've done. And at the end of chapter 12, he goes, just to prove to you that I'm not making this up. It's not storm season, but I'm going to call in a storm, a terrible storm, to show you that God is still with me and he's not happy about this whole king thing. He says he's not abandoned you, but he ain't happy. And so Samuel calls in a storm. A storm comes in. It's crazy. Everybody's fearful. Everybody's sorry. Everybody's weeping. And God and Samuel says to the people, listen, it's very simple. Matter of fact, I'll bring it up because this is going to come up later. Let me make sure. Give me 2 seconds. So here we go. We got it here. It is chapter 12, and we'll jump in at 23. Samuel says this to the people as the storm is there. Moreover, as for me, far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by ceasing to pray for you. And I will instruct you in the good and the right way. So he's like, I'm still going to be an advisor to you. I'm still going to be here. I'm not leaving you. I'm not praying for you anymore. I'm not angry at you. It's not like now you got to have the me against you just being here like, the whole time. No, it's not the case. Only fear the Lord and serve him faithfully with all your heart. For consider what great things he has done for you. But if you still do wickedly, you shall be swept away, both you and your king. This is important. This is going to come up later. We will see it right around the corner. And this is takeaway number 2. And we'll see the actual example of this in the next story time that we'll jump into. When there's a command, there will be a test. If you pray for a thing, you will get an opportunity to exercise that thing. There's a command. Trust the Lord with all of your heart. Obey his commands. If you still do wickedly, you will be swept away. Period. What is Israel just off the heels of doing? Messing up the sacrifices with Eli and his sons. Right? That was like the last big thing that they were doing wrong. And choosing to follow man instead of God. 2 big things, not great. So he's saying, trust, 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 trust. They have a history of, just like we read about a couple stories ago with Abram, getting out of a situation or getting into a situation, and then the first hurdle that arises, or when things start to not look like they're shaking out, doesn't matter all the miraculous things that have been happening up to that point. This hurdle, whatever it is, big or small, is, well, now I got to take things into my own hands. And we just read about it with Abram. Israel did it when they were coming out of the promised land, when Moses goes up on the Mount Sinai and they don't see him for like 40 days. And then they start baking a golden calf and worshiping that. And it just happens over and over and over and over and over again. He leads them to the promised land. They get to the promised land. There's giants in the land. They have to do a little bit of fighting, these pretty impressive figures that are out there. And everybody says, no, there's no way we could win. God brought us here to die. Over and over again, we see this. This is a history thing. This is a human thing. Chapter 13, we're going to see this, but we'll jump into that the next time. Thanks for watching.